Hey guys, tonight we step into the hot, restless heart of Medellin, where the streets hum with a rhythm equal parts laughter and danger. Imagine the scent of fried arepas mixing with exhaust fumes, the chatter of vendors competing with the distant thrum of motorbikes. Somewhere in this city, a young girl with sharp eyes and a sharper will is already learning how to move through life without ever letting anyone see her flinch. You probably won't survive this world unless you know how to fight without lifting a hand. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Griselda grows up in a city that never seems to rest. In the cramped, peeling rooms of her childhood home, the air is always warm, the space always full, and the walls thin enough to hear every argument, every whispered plan. Outside, men with hard eyes lean against shop fronts, and children learn early which corners to avoid. She notices which shopkeepers slide envelopes into passing hands, and which women walk quickly with their heads down. Poverty presses in on her family, and with it comes hunger. Not just the kind that gnaws at the stomach, but the kind that fuels a constant need for something more. Her mother works endlessly, her father absent, and Griselda becomes adept at reading the moods of adults. She can tell when someone's patience is fraying, when a voice is about to turn sharp, and when an opportunity might be hiding in a casual remark. She doesn't have toys the way some other children do. Instead, she collects moments, watching the way a street vendor counts his coins, or how a neighbor's son disappears for days and comes back with new shoes. In her world, every action has an unspoken explanation, and she learns to decipher those explanations long before she can spell them. Medellin in these years is more than a city. It's a lesson in survival wrapped in the color of its markets and the shadow of its alleys. Local gangs already weave their influence through neighborhoods, offering protection that comes with a price. Police presence is inconsistent, sometimes distant, sometimes suddenly intense. So most people learn to rely on themselves or on those who can command fear. By the time she's old enough to run errands alone, Griselda knows the safest routes and the fastest ways home. She learns the subtle art of carrying herself with confidence she doesn't yet feel. When older boys call out to her from doorways, she doesn't quicken her step. She meets their eyes, memorizing faces. The friends she makes are not the type to ask questions. They share scraps of food, hand-me-down clothes, and stories about the older kids who have already found ways to make quick money. She listens, storing away details like a thief hides coins. One afternoon, she follows her cousin into a part of the city she's been told to avoid. The houses here are closer together, and the air feels heavier. Men watch from doorways. Conversations pause as they pass. Inside a small, dimly lit shop, her cousin exchanges a small packet for a handful of bills. It's over in seconds, and no one speaks of it afterward. But for Griselda, the image lingers. She begins to see the patterns, how certain people in the neighborhood have nicer things, newer clothes, and how they walk as if the street belongs to them. She doesn't yet know exactly what they do, but she understands they hold a kind of power that money alone can't explain. Evenings in her household are a mix of noise and exhaustion. Her mother comes home late, sometimes too tired to cook. Griselda starts preparing small meals, learning quickly how to stretch whatever is available. She notices how her younger siblings look to her more often, not just for food, but for direction. Without realizing it, she's already practicing leadership. Sometimes she stands at the small window in the front room, looking out at the streetlights blinking on. The city changes at night, quieter in some ways, more dangerous in others. Somewhere, far across town, deals are being made, loyalties tested, and people are disappearing without notice. She doesn't yet know it, but she will one day stand at the center of that world. In these early years, survival isn't about muscle or weapons. It's about knowing when to speak, when to listen, and when to move without being seen. For Griselda Blanco, Medellin is the first teacher. Harsh, unyielding, but honest in its lessons. And she learns them all. The girl who once darted between street stalls now walks with a different kind of purpose. Medellin is still her classroom, but the lessons have shifted. Adolescence arrives like a sudden rainstorm, unexpected, messy, and impossible to ignore. Her body changes, her voice gains a sharper edge, and the world begins to treat her less like a child and more like a piece on the board. She spends more time away from home, finding excuses to linger near the market or the bus station, places where strangers pass through and conversations are traded as easily as cigarettes. She notices how men glance her way, some with curiosity, others with calculation. It's a kind of attention that could be dangerous, but also useful, depending on how it's handled. One afternoon, while watching a dice game in a dusty courtyard, she hears a man mutter something about a shipment being delayed. He's not talking to her, but she files the word away. The older boys gamble with a confidence that comes from knowing someone will cover them if trouble starts. That's the first time she understands the value of belonging to a group that others fear. She starts testing her own presence, asking small favors, calling in debts from friends who've borrowed from her in the past. A borrowed scarf, a loaf of bread, a little money here and there. She learns that most people will give more than they can afford if you ask the right way. Charm and threat, she realizes, can live comfortably in the same sentence. At home, tension grows. Her mother senses her restlessness, warns her about the kind of people she's spending time with. But Griselda is already leaning toward the streets. The rules there are clearer, even if they're harsher. You know who holds the power, and you know how quickly it can shift. One evening, she and two friends slip into a crowded cantina, not to drink, but to listen. The air is thick with smoke and the clink of glasses. In a corner, a man with a gold watch tells a story about a police raid. He laughs as if it were a minor inconvenience. The people around him hang on every word. That's the kind of presence she wants, the kind that makes others lean in, that makes fear look like a badge of honor. She begins experimenting with her image. A brighter dress here, a bolder lipstick there. She's not trying to look older. She's trying to look untouchable. On the streets, appearance can be armor. Trouble, of course, is never far. A petty argument with a local girl turns into a small brawl, and for the first time, Griselda tastes the metallic tang of blood in her mouth. She doesn't cry. She spits onto the dusty ground and laughs, a sound that makes her opponent back away. Word spreads quickly. By the next week, people look at her differently, not because she's dangerous, but because she didn't flinch. Many people still think that fear is about size, strength, or the number of people you can call to your side. In Medellin, fear is about unpredictability. So what do you think? Would you rather face someone you understand, or someone whose next move you can't guess? By now, she's moving between worlds, the noisy comfort of her family home and the sharper edges of the street. She still helps her mother, still watches her younger siblings, but her thoughts are elsewhere. Each day feels like a rehearsal for something bigger, something that will take her far from these narrow alleys. Late at night, she walks home past shuttered shops and quiet windows. Dogs bark behind fences. Somewhere, music plays softly from a distant radio. She imagines herself in a different city, wearing finer clothes, speaking to men who command more than just a street corner. What she doesn't realize yet is that this combination, her streetwise instincts, her willingness to take small risks, and her growing talent for commanding attention, will form the foundation for an empire. And empires, she will soon learn, are built one calculated step at a time. By the time her teenage years settle in fully, Griselda's ambitions have outgrown the small hustles that once kept her busy. The city's energy, once overwhelming, now feels like a chessboard waiting for her to make the right move. She has spent years watching others pull coins from thin air, trading risk for reward. Now she wants her own stake in the game. Her first step into smuggling isn't grand. It's barely a whisper. A friend of a friend, someone she's seen lurking near the bus terminal, offers her a chance to carry something across town for a modest fee. The package is small, wrapped neatly in brown paper, and the instructions are clear. Take it to an address, hand it to a man with a scar over his eyebrow, and leave without conversation. She doesn't ask questions. Questions slow things down, and in this city, they can also shorten lifespans. The job is done in less than an hour, and the money, more than she's ever earned in a single afternoon, feels like proof that she's been wasting her time until now. The next job comes quickly. This time, it's not paper-wrapped goods. It's a leather handbag that feels heavier than it should. She's told to carry it onto a bus headed out of the city and pass it off to a woman in a yellow dress. Again, no questions, just a quiet exchange. And again, the payment is enough to turn her head. These small runs become her introduction to the trade routes that crisscross Colombia. She begins to understand how goods, legal and otherwise, flow through the veins of the country, slipping past the eyes of authorities who are either overworked or well paid to look the other way. With each job, her confidence grows. She starts to carry herself differently, shoulders back, eyes forward. The people who once overlooked her now seem to notice her presence. They sense she's involved in something that gives her both income and information, two currencies of equal power. Of course, smuggling carries its own risks. One evening, while delivering a parcel, she's stopped by two policemen. Her pulse quickens, but her face remains calm. She plays the part of an innocent girl on an errand for her aunt, inventing details so casually that one officer even chuckles. They wave her on, and only when she turns the corner does she allow herself to breathe again. She learns an important lesson that night. Survival in this business isn't just about avoiding danger. It's about convincing danger it has no reason to bother you. Over time, her contacts expand. She meets people who move goods between Medellin and Bogotá, others who connect to the Caribbean coast. She learns the names of key players, some whispered in admiration, others in fear, and she starts to imagine a place for herself among them. Her family notices the change. Her clothes are newer, her shoes better. She contributes more to the household without explaining where the money comes from. Her mother, suspicious but relieved to have the extra income, asks fewer questions than she might have when Griselda was younger. The temptation to take bigger jobs grows stronger. She's no longer satisfied with small deliveries. She wants to handle shipments that matter, the kind that change reputations. But in Medellin, ambition is a double-edged knife. It can open doors, or it can make you a target. One day, a man she's seen around the market approaches her with an offer that feels like a turning point. It's not just about carrying something across town. It's about getting something out of the country. The stakes are higher, the route longer, and the payment enough to make her feel dizzy when she hears it. Impossible to ignore. Many people still believe that your first big job should be approached with caution, that it's better to wait until you've built a thicker layer of protection around yourself. But she wonders, if you wait too long, do you risk missing the chance entirely? That night, she lies awake in her small room, listening to the distant hum of the city. In the shadows, she weighs the risk against the reward, and for the first time, the idea of leaving Medellin entirely feels less like a dream and more like a plan. The streets of Medellin have taught her how to move unnoticed, but the leap to New York is a different challenge entirely. The opportunity comes through the same man who'd offered her that first cross-country job, a wiry figure with a voice that never seems to rise above a murmur. He tells her there's a market in the north, bigger than anything she's seen. If she can get herself there, he'll make the introductions that matter. Getting to the United States in those days isn't simple, but it isn't impossible either. She knows someone who knows someone, and for a price, the right papers appear. The photo on the passport barely resembles her, but it doesn't matter. What matters is getting past the eyes that matter. The flight itself is a blur of recycled air and jittery anticipation. She's never been in the sky before. The hum of the engines, the sight of clouds sliding by the small oval window, feels almost unreal. Every time a flight attendant walks past, her pulse ticks up a notch. But she keeps her expression steady, flipping through an old magazine as if she belongs there. When she steps off the plane at JFK, the cold air bites her skin. It smells different here. Less earth, more metal and exhaust. The city looms in the distance, a forest of steel and glass that seems to pulse with its own kind of life. Her contact in New York is a Colombian man named Carlos, who runs a small shop in Queens as a front. He greets her warmly, but his eyes measure her the way you'd measure a knife, by its potential to cut clean or to turn in your hand. Over a plate of greasy diner eggs, he explains the basics. In this city, trust is currency, but so is the ability to vanish. The work begins modestly. She's not moving crates off docks or stuffing suitcases just yet. Instead, she's learning the geography of the city. The subway lines, the alleys where deals are made, the diners where information changes hands more often than coffee cups. She quickly discovers that New York is a place of extremes. The lights are brighter, the cold is sharper, and the money flows faster if you know where to stand. The language barrier is an obstacle at first, but her instinct for reading people translates perfectly. A raised eyebrow, a pause too long, a smile that doesn't touch the eyes. These are universal signs. One evening, Carlos takes her along on a delivery. It's just a bag of imported goods for a man in the Bronx, but the tension in the air makes it clear there's more at stake. The transaction is brief, no more than a handshake and a few words, but Griselda catches the way both men glance around before stepping back inside. In this city, danger doesn't announce itself. It slips in quietly and leaves even quieter. She begins to take on small runs, nothing that would make headlines, but enough to prove she can be trusted. The streets of Queens become her new map. The faces at the corner bodegas, her new markers. She learns which police precincts are more likely to look the other way, and which ones take pride in catching someone like her. The cold, she realizes, is the biggest difference. Back in Medellin, the air was thick and forgiving. Here, winter cuts straight through you. She buys a heavy coat with some of her first earnings, the kind with deep pockets perfect for carrying things you'd rather not be seen with. Many people still think that moving to a big city is the hardest part of making it. She's starting to believe that the real challenge is holding your place once you're there, staying just visible enough to be remembered, but never so visible that someone decides to erase you. In the evenings, she sometimes stands at the window of her small Queens apartment, looking out at the street below. The snow muffles the city's usual noise, and for a moment, it almost feels peaceful. But she knows better. Beneath that white layer lies a city as restless, as hungry, and as dangerous as any street in Medellin. And she intends to make it hers. Carlos isn't just her contact, he becomes her husband. The marriage to Carlos is both personal and practical, a union built as much on mutual need as on attraction. In the shadowy circles they inhabit, trust is fragile. Binding themselves together gives each of them a form of protection. At least that's the theory. The early days are simple enough. They share a cramped apartment above the shop, the scent of fried food and detergent drifting up from the street. Carlos handles the bulk of the business dealings, while Griselda learns from the sidelines, absorbing every detail of how money moves, how people are handled, and how problems are made to disappear. Carlos is careful with his words. He's not one for grand speeches. He prefers quiet instructions, delivered with a tone that expects obedience. Griselda listens, but she also watches for gaps in his method. She notices when he lets someone talk too long, when he trusts the wrong handshake. In her mind, she's already imagining a sharper, leaner way of doing things. The business, though modest at first, grows steadily. Shipments arrive hidden among legal cargo, slipped past customs through a mix of forged paperwork and paid-off officials. Packages move from the docks to the back of the shop, and from there into the hands of men who vanish into the city's veins. But growth brings competition, and competition in New York's underworld is rarely civil. A disagreement over territory leads to a tense meeting in a dimly lit basement where the smell of damp concrete hangs heavy. Griselda stays in the background, pretending disinterest, but she catches every detail. The clenched fists, the too long silences, the way one man's eyes keep drifting toward the exit. It's here that she sees her first real flash of violence in the city. A deal collapses into shouting. Shouting collapses into a single sharp movement, and suddenly one man is clutching his side, his face pale. Carlos handles it with a chilling calm, telling the others to take care of it before turning back to business. That night, as they walk home, Griselda doesn't ask questions. She understands now that survival isn't just about making deals. It's about making sure those deals are enforced. Their marriage shifts under the weight of this reality. What began as a partnership starts to feel like a quiet contest. She finds herself making small deals of her own, testing the edges of Carlos's authority. When he notices, he doesn't confront her directly. He simply warns her that the city has a way of eating those who get too ambitious too quickly. Still, she can't help it. The thrill of moving product, of turning risk into profit, is addictive. Each successful job reinforces the belief that she could run things her own way. And as she begins to build her own small network within Carlos's operation, she realizes she's no longer just learning the business. She's becoming part of it. Many people still think that power in this world comes from sheer force, but she's starting to see it differently. Power, she believes, comes from being underestimated until it's too late. Their home life reflects this balance: warm meals, shared jokes, but an undercurrent of unspoken tension. They both know the other is keeping secrets, but neither pushes too hard. In their line of work, secrets are less a betrayal and more a form of insurance. One snowy evening, as they sit by the window drinking cheap wine, Griselda looks out at the city and sees not just opportunity, but inevitability. She knows she won't spend her life in someone else's shadow. And though she hasn't yet planned every step, she's certain of one thing. When the time comes, she'll be ready to take everything she's learned and make it her own. The lessons learned from Carlos's operation become the seeds of her own ambitions. While he focuses on the larger shipments and established clients, Griselda quietly starts weaving her own network. It begins innocently enough, helping to arrange smaller transactions when Carlos is busy, making introductions between couriers and buyers who might otherwise never meet. But soon, these favors take on a life of their own. She starts with people on the fringes: a dock worker she once chatted with while waiting for Carlos, a taxi driver who knows which warehouses stay busy after dark, a seamstress whose brother moves things in the Bronx. These connections aren't flashy, but they're dependable, and more importantly, they're hers. Her approach is deliberate. She doesn't try to outshine Carlos or make a direct grab for territory. Instead, she creates parallel paths, routes that exist beside his, overlapping just enough to benefit from his protection, but separate enough to be invisible if anyone looks too closely. The goods she moves are small at first, easy to conceal, easy to sell, but with every successful run, she gains leverage. People begin coming to her directly, drawn by her ability to solve problems quickly and quietly. She never overpromises, and she never blames luck for a job well done. In this world, reliability is more valuable than charm, though she knows how to use both. The real turning point comes when she secures a deal with a contact in Florida, someone who can move product by boat and avoid the tighter scrutiny of New York's docks. It's not a huge shipment, but it's hers from start to finish. She arranges the pickup, ensures the delivery, and collects payment without Carlos ever having to lift a finger. When she hands him his share, a gesture meant to keep the peace, he studies her for a long moment. "You're getting good at this," he says, his tone neutral, but his eyes alert. It's a compliment, but it's also a warning. In New York's underworld, too much success can be as dangerous as failure. Competitors watch for weakness, but they also watch for anyone climbing too quickly. And those closest to you may not always cheer the loudest when you rise. Her network continues to grow, branching into new neighborhoods, new faces. She learns how to read the shifting tides of the market, when to push product and when to hold back. She keeps her ear to the ground for whispers of police raids, using them as opportunities to step in where others have stumbled. Many people still think that trust in this business is impossible to find. Griselda sees it differently. It's not that trust is impossible. It's that it must be built transaction by transaction, never given freely, and always backed by the ability to disappear if needed. Her operations remain under the radar for now, but she knows it's only a matter of time before she has to choose: keep working in Carlos's shadow or step fully into her own light. And if she chooses the latter, it won't be a gentle separation. One rainy night, as she sits alone in the back of the shop counting cash, she realizes she's already made her choice. The only question left is how to make the move without burning the entire city down in the process. The cracks in Carlos's empire aren't wide yet, but Griselda can feel them under her fingertips. Rivalries, once distant murmurs, are starting to move closer. Names are being whispered, some with respect, others with venom. And she knows enough to recognize that friends in this business have a habit of becoming enemies overnight. It starts with territory disputes. A Dominican crew claims a stretch of queens that Carlos's people have been using for years. At first, Carlos dismisses it, calling them kids trying to play at business. But within weeks, 2 of his couriers are robbed in broad daylight. No one is killed, but the message is clear. The rules are shifting. Griselda watches him try to manage it. Closed-door meetings, tense phone calls, cash exchanged for promises of peace. But she can tell he's losing ground. And in losing ground, he's losing the kind of fear-based respect that keeps others in line. She sees opportunity where he sees danger. Quietly, she starts strengthening her own alliances. She makes friends with people Carlos ignores. Small-time operators who aren't worth his notice, but who know every alley, every face, every door that opens late at night. They start feeding her information. Which routes are safest? Which warehouses are moving more product? Who's looking to buy without drawing attention? It's not long before her name starts slipping into conversations in the shadows. La Madrina. Someone calls her at a backroom card game. A joke at first, but one that sticks. The Godmother. The name is still small, still local, but it's a seed she knows will grow if she waters it. Tension with Carlos grows in parallel. He's not blind. He can see she's building her own reach, but he's too busy trying to hold off rivals to shut her down. And maybe, deep down, he knows he's safer with her in play than without her. One evening, she joins him for a meeting with a Cuban intermediary in Brooklyn. The man's smile is warm, but his eyes are calculating. Midway through the discussion, he glances at her and asks for her opinion on a shipment's timing. Carlos hesitates, clearly annoyed at the intrusion, but Griselda answers smoothly, suggesting a route that shaves a day off transport time and avoids an area with increased police presence. The Cuban nods, impressed. After that, the conversation tilts toward her, and Carlos barely hides his irritation. That night, back at the apartment, he warns her not to overstep. She just smiles, offering him a drink as if the matter is settled. But inside, she knows something fundamental has shifted. The people they deal with are starting to see her as more than just a wife. Many people still believe that you can rise in this business only through brute force. She's proving that information, timing, and presence can be just as lethal. The rivalry in Queens turns violent in the summer. One of Carlos's trucks is hijacked, its cargo vanished. Everyone assumes it's the Dominicans, but Griselda learns through her own channels that the theft was inside work, a driver who'd been paid double to walk away from his own load. She keeps the information to herself, using it to broker a quiet deal with a new contact who can replace the lost goods. By the time the dust settles, Carlos's operation is still standing, but barely. Griselda's, on the other hand, has gained new routes, new suppliers, and new allies. She doesn't brag, doesn't confront, but she's aware that the balance of power is starting to tilt. And in a city like New York, once that shift begins, it's only a matter of time before everyone feels it. By the late 1970s, the pull of Medellin is impossible to ignore. Griselda has been away for years, but her connections there have only deepened. Letters and whispered messages from old acquaintances carry news of the city's booming trade. Cocaine is no longer a side hustle. It's a full-fledged industry, and Medellin is its beating heart. Carlos sees no reason to return. New York still has potential, he insists. But Griselda feels differently. The city has given her training, contacts, and a taste of what she can command, but it has also boxed her in. In New York, she is still someone's wife. In Medellin, she could be something else entirely. The decision is hers in the end. She leaves with little fanfare, slipping away under the guise of visiting family. The flight south is quieter than her first trip to America, but her mind is louder. Every mile closer to Colombia feels like a step toward a future she can finally shape with her own hands. Medellin greets her with the same contradictions it always had: bright colors and sharp edges, warmth and danger intertwined. The streets have changed, though. There's more money now, and with it, more guns. Men who once leaned against doorways in worn sandals now wear gold watches and drive imported cars. The air hums with opportunity, but also with the unspoken knowledge that fortunes here are built on fragile ground. Her old neighborhood still remembers her. Some greet her warmly, others warily. She's no longer the skinny girl watching from the corner. She carries herself with the confidence of someone who's seen the inside of deals that never make it to the newspapers. Reconnecting with old contacts is easy. They want what she can offer: access to American markets, reliable channels for moving product, and the experience of operating under the radar in a city like New York. She wants what they have: supply, muscle, and a home base where her name can grow without someone else's shadow dimming it. She sets up meetings in cafes, in back rooms, in the shaded courtyards of large, quiet houses. Some are with small operators looking for expansion. Others are with figures whose names carry weight across the city. She listens more than she speaks, learning who controls which routes, who's allied with whom, and where the fault lines lie. It doesn't take long before she begins moving product again, this time in larger quantities. The arrangements are cleaner, the margins better. Her network in the U.S. is still intact, and now it works in reverse. Goods flow north, money flows south, and Griselda stands at the center. Many people still think that returning home after success abroad is a step backward. For her, it's the opposite. Here, she's not just another player in an overcrowded market. She's the one with foreign reach, the one who can turn a shipment into dollars faster than most can turn it into pesos. But Medellin is not a city that rewards passivity. She knows that staying ahead will require more than just good connections. It will require the ability to outthink, outmove, and, when necessary, outgun her rivals. One evening, standing on the balcony of a hillside home, she looks out over the city lights. They glitter like the spoils of 1,000 deals, each one belonging to someone ready to defend it with their life. She's determined to claim her share, and she knows she won't be asking for permission. Her second marriage begins much like the first: warmth on the surface, calculation underneath. The man is Alberto Bravo, a Colombian smuggler with enough reach to matter, but not so much power that he overshadows her. To outsiders, it looks like a union of affection, but both of them know it's also a merger of resources. Alberto brings stability and a network of suppliers in Colombia. Griselda brings the pipeline to the United States and a reputation for running tight operations. Together, they have the potential to expand faster than either could alone. In the smoky backrooms of Medellin, the talk is that they're a couple to watch. At first, it works. They move shipments through the Caribbean with precision. Small planes landing on makeshift airstrips, boats slipping into quiet coves under moonlight. The money flows steadily, and with it comes the kind of luxury that once belonged only to Griselda's daydreams. Fine clothes, heavy jewelry, dinners in the best restaurants. She knows better than to mistake these things for security, but she enjoys them all the same. Alberto has charm, but he also has a temper. He doesn't always appreciate her growing influence. In meetings, she notices the way his jaw tightens when clients ask her opinion instead of his. He makes comments about her knowing her place, and she smiles in response, but her mind files away every slight. The business begins to change shape. Larger shipments mean larger risks, and those risks aren't always from the authorities. Rival groups are expanding too, and the competition in Miami, their main U.S. hub, is fierce. The city is filling with what the press will soon call cocaine cowboys, and it's only a matter of time before lines are crossed. She senses that Alberto underestimates her, and she uses that to her advantage. While he focuses on logistics, she builds loyalty among their couriers and middlemen. She makes sure they know that if a problem arises, she can solve it faster than he can. Quietly, she becomes indispensable. The tension between them builds over time. Small arguments turn sharp, and business disagreements spill into their personal life. There are whispers in Medellin that they might split, professionally or otherwise, but no one dares to say it to their faces. Many people still think that in partnerships like theirs, love can smooth over ambition. Griselda knows better. Love, in this business, is a tool like any other. Useful, but never worth more than the control it buys. The turning point comes on a trip to Bogota, where a meeting with a supplier turns unexpectedly hostile. Accusations fly. Someone has been skimming from shipments, and the finger points at Alberto. He denies it, but the air in the room is thick with distrust. Later, in private, he accuses her of planting the idea. She doesn't confirm it, but she doesn't deny it either. Their partnership survives the incident, but the fracture is permanent. The shared vision that brought them together is now clouded by suspicion, and each begins to prepare for the possibility that one day they might have to move against the other. From the outside, nothing changes. They still appear side by side at meetings, still operate their network efficiently. But in private, both are sharpening their knives. Miami in the early 1980s is a sunlit mirage with shadows that stretch far beyond the shoreline. Palm trees sway over pastel buildings, music drifts from open bars, and the ocean glitters in the distance. But the streets are thick with the tension of a city living in the fast lane. For Griselda, it's not just a destination, it's a stage, and she intends to own it. She and Alberto make the move quietly, arriving with just enough visible wealth to signal importance without drawing too much official attention. They rent a large house in a quiet neighborhood, the kind with high hedges and a gated drive. Behind those gates, however, the business hums. Couriers arrive at odd hours, meetings take place by the pool, and coded phone calls punctuate the day. Miami offers something New York never did: speed. The proximity to Colombia means shipments arrive faster, fresher, and more frequently. Small planes touch down on rural strips before dawn, and speedboats skim across the waves under cover of darkness. From there, the goods melt into the city: nightclubs, warehouses, backroom offices. Griselda wastes no time establishing her presence. She visits key players, reintroducing herself to old contacts and making new ones through calculated gestures, small loans, timely favors, shared information. In a city where reputation is currency, she spends generously. Alberto handles the logistics, but Miami's social scene belongs to her. She moves through it with precision, attending the right parties, making herself visible to the right people. At high-end boutiques, Her purchases are bold. At charity events, her donations are discreet but memorable. She cultivates an image of elegance edged with danger, a woman who belongs in every room, yet answers to no one. The business grows rapidly. Miami's appetite for cocaine is insatiable, and the demand fuels expansion. With every successful shipment, her influence deepens. Soon, people are bypassing Alberto altogether to deal directly with her. He notices, but the sheer volume of money rolling in keeps open conflict at bay. Of course, Miami isn't without competition. Other groups, Cuban, Colombian, American, are fighting for the same customers, the same routes. The violence that will define the city's cocaine cowboy era is beginning to simmer. Drive-bys, daylight shootings, and bodies left in parking lots are no longer shocking. They're just the cost of doing business. Griselda understands that in this climate, fear is as necessary as supply. She begins to develop a reputation for being decisive in disputes. A debt unpaid, a betrayal discovered. These things are handled swiftly, often without her having to raise her voice. Word travels fast. Disrespect her and you'll regret it. Many people still think that Miami's glamour in these years was purely for show, a thin layer over chaos. She knows the truth. The glamour is the bait, and the chaos is the hook. One evening, as the sun sets over Biscayne Bay, she stands on her balcony, glass of wine in hand, watching the city lights flicker on. Somewhere out there, deals are being made. Fortunes are being won and lost in hours. And in the middle of it all, her network is growing, tightening, becoming harder to touch. For now, the streets are hers to navigate. But she knows Miami will not stay still for long. Rivalries here don't fade. They sharpen. And when they do, the ocean breeze won't be enough to cool the heat that's coming. Miami's cocaine scene doesn't just grow in the early 1980s. It explodes. The city becomes a marketplace without rules, where kilos move faster than the tide, and money piles up in ways that defy imagination. Newspapers begin printing the term cocaine cowboys, a name that carries equal parts fascination and fear. For Griselda, it's an era of opportunity and of constant testing. She adapts quickly to the city's new tempo. The days are for meetings, distribution, and managing shipments. The nights are for keeping her face visible in the right rooms. Her presence is calculated. Sometimes she arrives in understated elegance, letting her quiet confidence speak for her. Other times she chooses bold colors, diamond jewelry, a visible statement that she isn't to be overlooked. The business grows in both scope and complexity. Shipments come not just by boat and plane, but through hidden compartments in trucks or disguised in legitimate cargo. Miami's ports are busy enough that a clever operator can move almost anything, provided the right palms are greased. She knows which customs officers can be bought and which are best avoided entirely. With this growth comes a sharper edge. Disputes over shipments or territory can no longer be settled with a handshake. Rivals carry out their warnings in the open. Cars riddled with bullets. Storefronts torched in the night. The violence isn't random. It's deliberate. A way to send messages without speaking a word. Griselda's own reputation begins to harden. Stories circulate, some true, some exaggerated, about her decisiveness in handling those who cross her. A courier caught skimming from a delivery disappears from the city. A nightclub owner who stalled on paying is suddenly eager to settle his debt after a late-night visit from two of her men. She doesn't need to confirm these stories. Letting them live on their own makes them even more effective. Law enforcement notices. The Miami-Dade police forms special units dedicated to drug enforcement, and DEA agents begin spending more time in the city. Surveillance vans appear in odd places, Helicopters sometimes hover over neighborhoods known for trafficking. Griselda learns to vary her routines, using decoys and unexpected routes. The game is no longer just about moving product. It's about staying one step ahead of eyes that never blink. Many people still think that the cocaine era in Miami was pure chaos, a storm no one could control. But she sees it differently. Chaos is an opportunity disguised as disorder. Those who can navigate it, bend it, and even create it on their own terms will thrive. Her network now stretches beyond Miami, feeding markets in New York, Los Angeles, and smaller cities in between. Every route is a chain, and every link is tied to her. She rewards loyalty generously and punishes betrayal without hesitation. The people who work for her don't just respect her. They fear disappointing her. One humid night, she sits in her kitchen, counting a stack of bills that seems to grow no matter how much she sets aside. Outside, the streets are alive with music and the distant rumble of traffic. She knows the city is on the verge of boiling over. The violence is escalating. The police are tightening their grip. But for now, she's exactly where she wants to be. At the center of the storm, the one who can decide which way the wind blows. It's during these years that Miami gives her the name that will follow her forever: the Black Widow. On the streets, nicknames are currency, and this one is worth more than most. It comes from whispered accounts of her personal life, stories of husbands and lovers meeting untimely ends. Some are rooted in truth, others in rumor, but Griselda never moves to correct the record. In fact, she lets the legend breathe. She understands the value of myth. The Black Widow isn't just a person, she's a warning. A rival might think twice before crossing a woman whose very name suggests fatal consequences. And in a city where image can be as powerful as muscle, this reputation is another weapon in her arsenal. Her third marriage, to a man named Dario Sepulveda, only fuels the talk. Dario is younger, charming, and willing to operate in the gray areas without hesitation. At first, they seem inseparable, moving through Miami's high society as a pair that radiates both wealth and danger. But behind closed doors, friction grows. Dario wants a bigger share of control, and Griselda, by now a master at reading ambition, sees where this could lead. The Black Widow image becomes more than a street tale when those close to her start disappearing from her life for good. Whether it's bad luck, dangerous business, or something more deliberate, the result is the same. Griselda survives, and those who challenge her do not. People start speaking about her in lowered voices, even when they're sure she can't hear. Meanwhile, her operations in Miami reach their peak. Shipments are larger, routes more refined, and the money is staggering. She invests in properties, businesses, and lavish displays of wealth that mask the infrastructure of her empire. Every deal runs through her hands. Every payment is accounted for. Those beneath her move quickly when she calls, aware that hesitation could be misread as defiance. Law enforcement pressure increases. The DEA now has her name on its radar, though proof remains elusive. Agents tail her cars, tap phones where they can, and try to turn her associates. But fear keeps most people quiet. Even when the authorities manage to make arrests, those picked up rarely stay in custody long. Many people still think that a criminal empire's strength comes from the size of its army. She knows better. It comes from the belief, held by friend and foe alike, that crossing you is a mistake they'll never get to make twice. Her social appearances grow less frequent as she focuses more on strategy. She meets with lieutenants in guarded houses, her presence in the city's nightlife replaced by a quieter, more deliberate influence. Yet, her absence from the public eye only sharpens her legend. One summer evening, as she walks through her garden in the fading light, she considers how far she's come from those cramped streets in Medellin. Back then, survival meant slipping unnoticed through the city. Now, survival means the opposite, being seen, remembered, and feared. The Black Widow has become more than a name. It's a mantle she wears with purpose, a reminder to everyone in Miami that in her world, power is the most intoxicating and the most dangerous drug of all. By the mid-1980s, Griselda's wealth is no longer just measurable, it's visible in every corner of her life. Her Miami home is a fortress of white stone and tinted glass, guarded by men who know better than to ask questions. Inside, marble floors gleam, chandeliers drip crystals, and silk drapes fall heavy over tall windows. Yet beneath all this luxury lies something she never shakes, a persistent hum of paranoia. Money has bought her distance from the streets, but not from danger. She knows every dollar attracts attention, some from envious rivals, some from the very people she pays to protect her. She develops habits meant to keep her one step ahead. Routes to meetings change daily. Visitors are searched at the door, even those she's known for years. She speaks in codes, never directly naming people or places. Her sons, growing up in this world, are shielded from some realities and immersed in others. They attend private schools, wear designer clothes, and have toys other children only see in store windows. But they also learn, without being told, that trust is rationed carefully and that danger can arrive without warning. Even with layers of protection, she can't ignore the sense of being watched. Some nights, she stands at her window, scanning the streetlights for the glint of a car that shouldn't be there. On others, she sleeps in a different room than the night before. Miami's violence is no longer background noise. It's on her doorstep. News reports are filled with stories of midday shootings, bodies left in parking garages, and explosions that rattle windows blocks away. Sometimes, she knows the names behind the headlines before the papers do. The more she earns, the more she spends, not just on comforts, but on keeping her circle tight. Security teams rotate in shifts. Armored vehicles are bought in cash. Even in casual settings, lunch at a seaside restaurant, an afternoon of shopping, she is flanked by men whose eyes never rest. Many people still think that paranoia is a sign of weakness. She believes the opposite. It's a sign you're paying attention. In her world, the ones who relax too much are the ones whose names stop being spoken. Except in past tense, her wealth allows her to play roles few women in her position could. She can be the gracious hostess, serving champagne in her garden. She can be the shrewd negotiator, leaning over a table in a dim back room. She can be the mother, the widow, the businesswoman, all at once. And because she wears each role so convincingly, no one can be entirely sure which version of her they're dealing with at any given moment. One evening, she hosts a gathering at her home. The laughter is genuine, the music lively, the table heavy with food. Yet she watches everything. The way one man lingers too long near her office door, the quick glance between two guests when certain names are mentioned. By the time the night ends, she's made 3 new calculations. Who can be trusted, who needs to be tested, and who might have to be removed entirely. Luxury has given her comfort, but it's paranoia that keeps her alive. And in Miami's cocaine era, being alive is the truest display of wealth there is. Dario Sepulveda is nothing like her previous husband's. He's younger, restless, and drawn to the glamour that comes with her name. At first, the match seems strategic. He brings a certain charm to her public image, and she offers him access to a world most men only glimpse from the outside. But their marriage is as combustible as it is magnetic. Dario enjoys the spoils: fast cars, expensive suits, front row seats at Miami's best clubs. But he also wants a voice in decisions she's used to making alone. In meetings, he pushes for riskier moves, bigger shipments, faster turnarounds. Sometimes he's right. Other times she has to step in to fix the mess before it spreads. The strain between them grows in private. Arguments start small, over money, over who controls what, but escalate quickly. She knows he's seeing other women, and he knows she knows. But in their world, infidelity isn't the ultimate betrayal. Losing control is. Their son, Michael Corleone Blanco, becomes the one thing they both cling to. Griselda dotes on him in ways she never could with her older children, giving him the best clothes, the safest schools, the tightest security. Dario loves the boy too, but he resents how much of her attention he consumes. Tensions reach a breaking point when Dario decides to take Michael to Colombia without her consent. To him, it's a simple matter: spending time with his son in his home country. To her, it's a power move, an attempt to assert control over the one thing she values above all else. The decision ignites a war between them. Friends are forced to choose sides, and whispered threats begin to surface. Miami's underworld watches closely, sensing weakness in the cracks of their marriage. Many people still think that in matters of family, business rules don't apply. She knows otherwise. Family and business are the same thing, and control over one is control over the other. In the end, the conflict with Dario turns deadly. The official story will never be fully told. Some say he was killed in Colombia under mysterious circumstances. Others hint at a more direct order from her. What's certain is that after his death, Michael is back in her care, and her grip on both her family and her business is tighter than ever. Dario's absence removes a complication, but it also adds another layer to her legend. The Black Widow, they whisper, has claimed yet another victim. Whether it's truth or rumor doesn't matter. What matters is that no one will ever again try to use her son as leverage. By now, her name is unavoidable. In Miami's underworld, in the quiet corridors of federal offices, in the headlines that hint without proving, Griselda Blanco is a figure people discuss with either admiration, fear, or both. She has outlasted rivals, expanded her reach, and turned whispers into open acknowledgement. But with power this visible comes the kind of attention that never sleeps. The press begins to feed on the violence surrounding the cocaine trade. Photographs of bloody parking lots and seized shipments fill the papers. While they rarely print her name directly, the implication is always there. Stories of an unnamed female figure, orchestrating the flow from Colombia to Miami. Every time she sees such a report, she smiles faintly. The mystery keeps her untouchable. Law enforcement is less subtle. DEA agents now refer to her openly in meetings. They monitor her properties, follow her cars, question her associates. The Miami-Dade police, too, have dossiers thick with surveillance notes and informant tips. But they can't pin enough on her to make an arrest stick. She's careful. Meetings take place in controlled environments. Conversations happen in person, and the people she trusts are few. Still, the atmosphere tightens. A rival's betrayal leads to a series of retaliatory hits. that make the evening news. Police presence in certain neighborhoods spikes overnight. Informants become a constant worry. Faces she's seen for years suddenly vanish, only to reappear with new cars or mysteriously dropped charges. Through it all, she keeps moving product. The machinery of her operation is too well oiled to stop. Shipments land in the Everglades, speedboats dart into hidden inlets, and trucks blend into regular traffic with their hidden cargo. Her lieutenants know the drill. Move fast, stay quiet, leave no loose ends. In the midst of this pressure, her personal life shrinks to a tight circle. Her children, a few trusted associates, and her security detail. The parties and public appearances are fewer now, replaced by closed-door strategy sessions. She's no longer interested in being seen. She's interested in staying free. Many people still think that the downfall of powerful figures comes from a single mistake. She knows better. It's rarely one mistake, but a series of small ones, stacked quietly until the weight can't be carried. One humid night, as thunder rolls in from the Atlantic, she sits in her study with a map spread before her. Routes are marked, names written in careful shorthand. Every line represents money, but every line also represents risk. She studies them with the same precision she once used to scan the streets of Medellin as a girl. Outside, rain begins to fall, soft at first, then heavy. The sound against the windows is steady, almost calming. She closes her eyes for a moment, letting it wash over her, imagining a future where she can finally let her guard down. But when she opens them, the map is still there, the names still waiting, the risks still alive. The Black Widow is still in control for now, but she can feel the circle tightening. The tightening circle doesn't just come from Miami. It stretches across borders. By the mid-1980s, Griselda's reach extends to places she hasn't visited in years. From safe houses in Bogotá to hidden docks in the Bahamas, her operation functions like a single organism, coordinated, adaptable, and relentless. Every point along the chain answers to her. She has lieutenants in New York, Los Angeles, and Houston. Couriers fly under assumed names, each one trained in the small details that avoid suspicion. How to pack, when to smile, when to look bored. Money flows back south in ways designed to confuse any investigator who might be watching. Cash is layered through legitimate businesses, hidden in real estate deals, and sometimes simply carried in suitcases by people who don't even know they're part of her network. Griselda's ability to connect these distant points is what keeps her ahead of rivals. Where others rely on a single port or route, she can shift her operations overnight if a lane becomes too dangerous. She knows the weather patterns over the Caribbean, the schedules of certain customs officers, the political situations in countries where a small shift in leadership could change everything. Her alliances are just as international. She maintains contacts in the Medellin cartel, but refuses to let herself be seen as subordinate to anyone. Deals are struck on equal terms, often face to face, where her calm demeanor and quiet authority carry as much weight as the guns her men carry into the room. The reach of her network also means she's never truly out of danger. Rivals in Miami can try to cut her off, but they know that her supply lines run deeper than theirs. The DEA might focus on one entry point, only to find she's already rerouted through another. Even when shipments are seized, they're rarely the ones she can't afford to lose. Many people still think that survival in this trade comes from strength alone. She knows it's about agility, being able to change course before your enemies even realize you've moved. Of course, international reach also attracts international enemies. In Colombia, shifting cartel politics mean old alliances sometimes turn volatile. In the U.S., Federal agencies now coordinate more closely, sharing information between cities. The game is harder, but it's still one she plays better than most. One evening, in her Miami home, she takes a call from a contact in Panama. A shipment meant for Florida has been delayed due to sudden paperwork issues. It's a problem that would halt another operator's plans for weeks, but she resolves it in a single day, redirecting the cargo to a different port and rerouting distribution through Texas instead. It's moments like this, solving problems before they grow, that keep her empire alive. And as long as she can keep doing that, the Black Widow will remain more than a legend. She'll remain untouchable. The Medellin connection has always been part of her foundation, but now it becomes a pillar she can't ignore. By the late 1980s, her dealings with the cartel are deeper, more deliberate, and more delicate than ever before. These are not casual arrangements. They're strategic alignments, where every meeting is a performance, and every agreement is a test of loyalty. She knows the men who sit at the top of Medellin's hierarchy. Some she's known since before their names were feared worldwide. Others are newer power players, eager to prove themselves in a dangerous arena. With them, she speaks plainly, but never carelessly, mixing warmth with warning, making it clear that while she respects their power, she will not be folded into their command. Her value to them is obvious. She controls a major share of Miami's market and can move shipments into the United States with a level of precision few can match. In return, they ensure her supply remains steady, the product pure, the quantities large enough to keep her customers loyal. It's a relationship built on mutual benefit, but also mutual suspicion. Both sides know that if the balance tips, the other will act without hesitation. She's careful in how she navigates these waters. Meetings in Colombia take place in secluded haciendas, away from prying eyes. Armed guards stand at the gates, but inside, the tone is often deceptively calm. Shared meals, quiet discussions over coffee. Beneath that calm, every word is weighed, every gesture noted. At times, the cartel requests her help beyond Miami, introducing contacts in New York, smoothing tensions in Los Angeles, advising on how to handle a difficult buyer. She complies when it serves her, but she never lets herself become dependent. She's seen too many operators vanish the moment they tied themselves too tightly to the wrong patron. Many people still think that aligning with a cartel is like joining a family. She knows it's more like playing chess. Alliances are temporary, sacrifices are inevitable, and the queen survives by never letting the board dictate her moves. Of course, her presence in Medellin's orbit also paints a target on her back. Rivals within the cartel question her influence. Law enforcement in both countries grows more determined to link her name to theirs. It's a dangerous place to stand, but it's also where the biggest moves are made. On one trip to Colombia, she sits at a long table with 3 cartel figures, the air heavy with cigar smoke. They talk routes, payments, and contingencies for when law enforcement inevitably strikes. At the end of the meeting, one of them leans forward and says, "You've made a lot of friends, Griselda. Just remember, friends can be expensive." She smiles, sipping her coffee before answering. So can enemies. It's a reminder to them and to herself that in this game, the only loyalty that truly matters is the one you can afford to keep. Miami's streets, once merely tense, now feel like they're vibrating. By the late 1980s, the city is in the throes of an all-out blood war. The quiet rivalries that simmered for years have erupted into open conflict, and it's impossible to walk more than a few blocks without sensing the weight of it. It begins with small sparks. An ambushed delivery here, a nightclub owner gunned down there, Then the tempo quickens. Car bombs detonate in the middle of the day. Gunfire echoes in parking garages. Bodies appear in the Everglades, left for the vultures. The violence isn't random. It's strategic, a language all its own, understood perfectly by those who know how to read it. Griselda watches the chaos with an unusual detachment. She's not indifferent. Violence on this scale has costs. But she also knows that war clears the field. Rivals too weak to defend themselves vanish. Routes open where before there were none, and those who survive come out either stronger or broken. She intends to be in the first category. She tightens her inner circle, trimming away anyone whose loyalty feels even slightly uncertain. Couriers are doubled up on dangerous runs. Hit squads are kept on standby, and her meetings become even more selective. The city is becoming too volatile for casual alliances. A single incident crystallizes the mood. One humid afternoon, a convoy carrying one of her high-volume shipments is attacked just outside Little Havana. The attackers are precise, hitting the lead and rear vehicles to trap the others. The firefight that follows leaves 3 dead and the shipment gone. Within hours, she has a list of names, men she believes were behind it, and by morning, 2 of them are gone from Miami entirely, the rest lying low. The newspapers call it the Summer of Blood, and law enforcement ramps up accordingly. The DEA sweeps through known hotspots. Miami-Dade officers flood into neighborhoods where gunfire has become routine. But in many ways, the increased police presence benefits her. Attention is spread thin, and with so many players moving, her own shipments can slip through under the cover of chaos. Many people still think that survival in a war is about fighting the loudest battle. She knows it's about fighting the right one, and making sure you're the last one standing when the smoke clears. Still, the cost is real. Friends vanish, either dead or in hiding. Some of her safe houses become unsafe, abandoned after neighbors start asking too many questions. Every public appearance carries risk, so she limits them to moments when her presence will have the most impact, arriving unannounced at a club owned by an ally or showing up at a meeting flanked by more security than strictly necessary. Late one night, she sits on her balcony, the sound of distant sirens threading through the humid air. Below her, Miami glitters as if untouched by the violence, its neon lights reflecting in the bay. But she knows better. The city is bleeding, and in its veins, her influence still flows, steady and unbroken. The streets of Miami are no place for innocence, yet Griselda's family is still bound to her world, whether she wills it or not. Her older sons, raised in the shadow of her rise, have grown into young men who understand exactly where the wealth comes from. For them, the lessons were never written down. They were learned from the way their mother moved, the way she measured trust, the way she made decisions that could change lives or end them. Michael, the youngest, is different. Still a boy, he sees more of the luxury than the danger. Private tutors, guarded outings, and imported toys shield him from the full picture. Yet even he picks up the cues. The sudden change in her tone when certain names are mentioned. The way armed men appear and disappear around the house. The quiet urgency that sometimes settles over the dinner table. Griselda's bond with her children is fierce, but it's not soft. She expects them to be observant, to listen more than they speak, to understand the rules of survival even before they step into adulthood. Love, in her world, is expressed in protection and in teaching them not to need it forever. Still, her role as a mother sometimes collides with her role as a business leader. When one of her older sons is arrested in a minor sweep, She reacts with a mix of calculated calm and quiet fury. Behind the scenes, strings are pulled, calls are made, and within days, he's back home. But the incident hardens her resolve to keep her family insulated from the front lines. Many people still think that in families tied to the underworld, children either inherit the empire or reject it entirely. She knows the truth is murkier. Bloodlines in this business are like currents, pulling you along whether you swim or not. Her enemies understand this too. Rumors surface about plots targeting her children, meant to destabilize her or force her into rash moves. She responds by doubling their security, shifting them between safe houses, and limiting their public appearances. Those who might have seen them at school or in the neighborhood now find them absent, replaced by whispers of where they've gone. Family gatherings take on a fortress-like quality. Birthdays are celebrated behind guarded gates, with only trusted guests invited. The laughter is real, the gifts extravagant, but beneath it all is the unspoken understanding that danger never knocks. It just walks in if you let it. Late one evening, after the guests have left and the house is quiet, she stands in Michael's room, watching him sleep. For a moment, she lets herself imagine a life where he could grow up without this constant vigilance. But she knows such a life is impossible, not for her and not for him. The best she can do is teach him how to carry the weight of the name he was born into. By the late 1980s, the pressure from U.S. federal agencies is no longer just background noise. It's a constant presence, pressing in from every angle. The DEA, Customs, FBI, and local Miami-Dade units share intelligence now, pooling resources in a way they hadn't before. Every major shipment is a gamble, every meeting a calculated risk. She knows her name is on their lists. It's not just whispers anymore. Confidential informants have mentioned her in statements. Surveillance teams have tracked her convoys, and undercover agents have tried, unsuccessfully, to infiltrate her network. Each failure makes them more determined. Her lawyers work as hard as her couriers. They're on retainer around the clock, filing motions, challenging warrants, and ensuring any raid is met with a legal counterstrike before the dust even settles. The law is another battlefield, and she treats it with the same ruthlessness as the streets. The investigations grow bolder. One summer afternoon, a safe house in Hialeah is raided. The feds find little, just enough cash to make the evening news. But the message is clear. They're close enough to know where she's been. Not long after, 2 of her trusted lieutenants are arrested on unrelated charges, only to be offered reduced sentences in exchange for testimony. Whether they'll take the deal is an open question, and that uncertainty is dangerous. Many people still think that the real threat in her world comes from rivals with guns. She knows that the most dangerous weapon is information, and the people willing to sell it. To counter this, she rotates her personnel constantly. Couriers who've been with her too long are sent away on vacation, sometimes to Colombia, sometimes to nowhere in particular. Meeting spots are abandoned overnight, replaced with new locations chosen at the last minute. She limits phone calls, relying instead on in-person conversations, often in public places where an arrest would be messy and visible. The pressure isn't just operational, it's psychological. Some of her associates start showing cracks, nervous glances, hesitation in their voices, small mistakes that could draw unwanted attention. She responds with a mix of incentives and intimidation, knowing that fear alone isn't enough to keep people loyal when prison looms as an alternative. Late one night, she sits at her desk, files spread out in front of her, a shortwave radio playing faintly in the background. Reports from her watchers filter in. Which cars have been parked too long near her properties? which unfamiliar faces have been spotted on her routes. The game has changed, no longer about who can move the most product, but about who can survive the longest under a constant spotlight, and she intends to survive. The day the arrest finally comes, it's not with the chaos of a raid or the flash of headlines. It's calculated, almost quiet. Early morning, just as the sun breaks over Miami, federal agents move in with a precision that speaks to months of preparation. Her security team is caught between response and restraint. The last thing she needs is a shootout that hands the prosecution a bloodier story. She's escorted out of her home in handcuffs, her expression unreadable. Neighbors peek from behind curtains, some shocked, others unsurprised. Cameras catch the moment, and by the evening news, the image is everywhere. Griselda Blanco, the Black Widow of Miami, finally in federal custody. The charges are serious: trafficking, conspiracy, and links to multiple violent incidents. The indictment is thick with names, dates, and locations. Some she recognizes instantly, others are unfamiliar, planted perhaps to test her reaction. She offers none. In the courtroom, as the charges are read, she sits straight, hands folded, eyes steady on the judge. The trial preparations are a war of their own. Her legal team, seasoned and expensive, begins dissecting every piece of evidence. Wiretaps, challenged, witness statements, picked apart for inconsistencies, chain of custody for seized shipments, questioned at every step. For every move the prosecution makes, the defense has a countermove, but the government has its own weapon. Witnesses willing to testify. Some are former associates, others rivals looking to trade information for freedom. Their stories paint her as a mastermind, a ruthless operator who directed an empire from behind layers of intermediaries. Many people still think that a courtroom is a place for truth. She knows it's a place for strategy, where the story that survives is the one told most convincingly. The trial is long, stretching over months. Each day brings new details to the public, some true, some exaggerated, all feeding into her legend. Outside, reporters cluster on the courthouse steps, eager for any development. Inside, she remains composed, never giving the jury more emotion than she intends. In the end, the government secures enough to convict. The sentence is decades long, a decisive blow in the eyes of law enforcement. As she's led away, there's no outburst, no visible anger, just the same steady look she's worn since the morning they took her in. The empire she built won't disappear overnight. Some routes will go dormant, others will shift to new hands. But she knows the truth. Empires built on fear and loyalty don't dissolve easily. Even when their architect is behind bars, prison strips away the trappings of wealth, but it does nothing to diminish her presence. Inside, Griselda adapts as she always has, by observing first, then moving with precision. The routine is rigid, the walls high, and the freedom she once commanded reduced to carefully measured hours. Yet even here, influence can be built. From the start, she draws attention. Some inmates recognize her from headlines, others from whispers in the outside world. Guards keep their distance beyond duty, aware that any interaction could find its way into a story. She isn't loud or confrontational. She doesn't need to be. Her history precedes her like an invisible escort. She quickly learns that prison has its own hierarchy, just as structured as the one she left behind. There are women who run things here, controlling contraband, managing trades, enforcing order in their own way. Rather than challenge them outright, she makes small moves. A favor granted here, a debt erased there. Over time, those women become allies. Her ability to read people, honed over decades, serves her well. She knows who's trustworthy, who's desperate, and who's playing both sides. In a place where information can be traded for protection or privilege, she's as careful as ever about what she says and to whom. She keeps her mind active with correspondence. Letters go out to her remaining contacts on the outside, coded where necessary, ensuring that some threads of her network remain intact. Money moves through trusted channels, keeping certain operations alive without drawing attention back to her. She may be confined, but she refuses to be cut off. Many people still think that prison erases power. She knows it simply changes the arena. In here, control is about influence rather than force, and respect is earned in quieter ways. Still, confinement weighs on her. The nights are long, the noise constant. She misses the ocean air, the hum of Miami streets, the ability to choose her own movements. She occupies her time with routine, reading, exercising, sometimes sitting for hours in the yard, letting her thoughts drift to the routes and deals she once commanded. Occasionally, new arrivals bring fresh news from the outside. Some tell her about Miami's shifting underworld, others about former allies now in hiding or dead. She listens without visible reaction, though each update sharpens her awareness that the empire she left is evolving without her. Yet she's not forgotten. Even behind bars, her name carries weight. Certain guards show a quiet deference, perhaps out of respect, perhaps out of caution. Inmates seek her approval or protection. And though she no longer walks Miami's streets, she knows her shadow still lingers there. When the day of her release comes, it feels unreal. Not because she doubted it would arrive, but because she has lived so long with the routine of walls and schedules. The gates open, and the air outside feels sharper, more alive. Years of confinement have made even the sound of passing traffic feel like a luxury. The world she steps into isn't the one she left. Miami has changed, its skyline taller, its streets busier, its underworld reorganized. Many of the names that once held weight are gone, replaced by younger faces she doesn't know. The cocaine market is different now, more fragmented, more cautious in some ways, more reckless in others. She's older, but not invisible. The press catches wind of her release, and for a few weeks her name reappears in headlines, accompanied by grainy photos from her earlier days. Some speculate she might return to the business, others think she'll fade quietly into anonymity. She lets them wonder. Her return to Colombia is deliberate. The U.S., with its federal eyes still lingering on her, offers no true freedom. In Medellin, she finds a city transformed, yet still familiar. New buildings rise where old ones once stood, but the rhythms of the streets, the markets, the music, the unspoken codes remain the same. At first, she keeps to herself. She buys a modest home, keeps a small staff, and spends her days away from the public eye. Old contacts visit occasionally, more out of curiosity than business. She listens to their stories, nods at their updates, but offers little in return. Whatever ambition once fueled her is quieter now, replaced by a different kind of calculation. How to live without inviting the past to come knocking. Many people still think that someone like her could never truly walk away. She isn't sure herself. The instinct to assess, to plan, to control, it doesn't vanish. But she knows the risks of re-entering a world that no longer plays by the same rules. Her focus shifts to her family, particularly her surviving children. She speaks to them often, though distant, both physical and emotional, remains. The years apart have left gaps that can't be easily filled. She tries anyway, understanding that some debts can't be paid with money or power. Life after release is quieter, but never fully calm. She still notices the occasional unfamiliar car parked too long on her street, still sees strangers in the market whose eyes linger a beat too long. She tells herself it's nothing, but she's lived too long to believe in coincidence. Her final years unfold far from the frenzy of Miami, but they are never truly free of its shadow. In Medellin, she keeps a routine: early mornings in the garden, quiet afternoons with books or visits from family. The city's hum is softer here in the neighborhood she chooses, but the undercurrent of danger remains, like a low note that never fades. Neighbors know her as an older woman with a guarded manner, polite but private. Few realize they live near someone whose name once made headlines across continents. Those who do know tend to keep their distance, not out of disrespect, but from the instinct to avoid becoming part of her story. Still, she's not a recluse. She walks to the market herself, selects her own produce, chats briefly with vendors. There's an unspoken awareness in these exchanges. People sense she is not to be pestered, but also that she carries a gravity few others do. Some see her as living proof that one can survive the storm. Others quietly wonder how many storms she herself created. Her days pass without the sharp adrenaline of her earlier life, but her mind remains alert. She still notices the small things: a man watching from across the street, the same motorcycle passing her corner more than once, a stranger in the market whose gaze lingers a moment too long. Years in her world have trained her to read such details without needing to dwell on them. The end comes without the theatrics her life might suggest. On a September afternoon in 2012, after leaving a butcher shop with a bag of meat in hand, she's approached by a man on a motorcycle. 2 shots are fired. She falls to the pavement as the motorcycle speeds away. Witnesses say it happened so fast that it was over before anyone could react. Many people still think her death was a final act of revenge from old rivals, a debt paid decades late. Others believe it was simply the way lives like hers end, quick, public, and without warning. In Medellin, her passing sparks a ripple of conversation, but not shock. The city has seen too many endings like this. For those who knew her name, it's the closing of a long and dangerous chapter. For those who didn't, it's just another crime in the headlines. Her life, once lived at the center of storms, ends in the same city where it began. In the days after her death, Medellin moves on as it always has. The streets where she once roamed as a restless girl now belong to a new generation. Vendors calling out prices, motorbikes weaving through traffic, music spilling from open windows. Yet for those who knew her story, the air feels different, as if a long, unbroken thread in the city's fabric has finally been cut. Her legacy is complicated. To some, she was a trailblazer in a world dominated by men, a woman who built an empire in an era when few would have believed it possible. To others, she was a symbol of the violence that consumed Miami and Medellin alike, a figure whose ambition left a trail of blood in its wake. Old associates speak cautiously, their words measured even years later. Rivals who survived her era nod with a kind of grim respect. Former law enforcement agents admit, sometimes reluctantly, that her skill in surviving as long as she did was remarkable, even if they saw her as the embodiment of everything they fought against. Her family's memories are quieter, more personal. For them, she was not just the Black Widow, but a mother, a provider, A woman whose love could be as fierce and unyielding as her business instincts. They live with the weight of her choices, benefiting from her protection, yet carrying the burden of her notoriety. Many people still think that a life like hers can be summed up in headlines or court records. The truth is messier, layered with moments that never made the news. The nights she stayed up planning routes by candlelight, the careful negotiations that kept her alive, the rare occasions when she let her guard down enough to laugh without calculation. As the years pass, her name becomes more legend than memory. For some, she is a cautionary tale about power's cost. For others, she is proof that survival itself can be a form of victory. In the end, Griselda Blanco leaves behind no official monuments, no plaques, no public recognition. But in the unrecorded history of the streets, her story lingers, woven into the fabric of two cities, spoken of in whispers, shaped by equal parts fear and fascination. And in those whispers, the Black Widow still walks. Now the streets are quiet, the storm's past, and the weight of her footsteps fades into memory. The noise of her world, the engines, the gunfire, the coded conversations, dissolves into the gentler sounds of a city at night. Somewhere in Medellin, the market stalls close, shutters drawn, lights dimmed. Somewhere in Miami, the ocean wind drifts over empty docks. Her story, sharp-edged and unyielding in life, softens in the retelling. The danger she carried was real, but now it is only a shadow, distant enough to be observed without fear. We are left with images. A girl navigating the markets of her childhood, a woman standing on a balcony with the city at her feet, an older figure walking home with groceries, unaware of the final moment waiting just ahead. It's strange how lives like hers leave echoes, faint impressions that outlast even the loudest acts. The streets remember in their own way, holding traces of voices, glances, and decisions that once shaped them. Time, patient and impartial, will carry these traces forward until they fade completely, leaving only the stories we choose to tell. So tonight, let the last of this story settle. Let the noise fall away until all that remains is the rhythm of your own breath, steady and calm. The past cannot follow you here. The streets are empty now. The night is yours. Sleep well.